So who knows how Rabbi Gari would have? I mean, it ends up being whatever. When the Rebbe's already passed away, you see the sichos from then on, from Mem Ches, 1988. They basically by Beis Nisan of that year, he introduces the concept of Yechia Melech, and he starts getting the world and his Chassidim ready for the Messianic redemption. And this is something that really has shifted in my opinion. Even though the Shach would say of him, "Who is this crazy man from Brooklyn who yells and screams and makes the world crazy about Mashiach from Brooklyn?" The Shach's living in a different reality in Bnei Brak where things weren't so Geuladik, and the Satmar also gave him a hard time, Zecher Tzadikim Levracha, about his campaign with Mashiach and Geula. But I think the Rebbe's point was quite revolutionary, and I think what it encompassed, what it revolved around, was the fact that we can't hide anymore what the Jews think, and he was the seventh generation from the Alter Rebbe who wrote very clearly what he conceives according to Kabbalah is the soul source of non-Jews. What he thinks is the difference between Jew and non-Jew in terms of their soul source. And I think the Rebbe, when the internet came out and when technology started really advancing, at least progressing on our little limited level, we'll look back in 20 years and say this was technology. But when he saw that news and information was being shared so freely and so openly, I think the Rebbe just basically came out after the previous Rebbetzin was no longer physically with us, and said, let me just put this all out here for you, and let me just show you exactly where the end of Jewish thought is. And he wanted us to know that basically the Messianic redemption is something not to be feared, and not to shy away from, and not to be scared of. And he kept saying the good prophecies will come true. And he reminded me a lot, if you look historically, of what the Rambam did. The Rambam also lived in a time where he was an influential character. Not in the Jewish world. In the Jewish world, his books were burned, I think, during his lifetime. He was put into cherem, into spiritual ecstasy by many people. But he knew, he was a physician, I think, to the leader of Egypt at that time. He lived in Egypt. And he wanted him to know something. The Jewish concept of Messianic redemption is nothing for you to fear. It's nothing we're holding over your head. It's something, and he writes this in Hilchos Malachim very clearly, that the Messianic Redeemer will simply come. He will restore Jews in their practice of Judaism. He will restore breaches in its practice, in the practice of Torah and mitzvahs, and he will perfect the world in the service of God. And the water will cover just like water covers the ocean bed, so too knowledge of God will cover the world. And he talks openly about the one from Nazareth and the Ishmaelite, and he says they were clearly, it's a footnote that's sometimes been deleted, but it's been brought back. He says that these people were sent to pave the way for a Melech HaMashiach. And you shouldn't think that it already happened. You shouldn't think that there's going to be bloodshed attached to it. Because the Rambam wants you to know, like the Rebbe wants you to know, this is a natural progression in the evolution of mankind. A time of world peace, a time of an end of economic disparity, a time when man chooses to use his intellect to solve his problems as opposed to using the intellect which creates guns to solve their problems, or bombs, God forbid. But a time when we're geared towards peace and ending economic despair on the planet so we can pursue more subliminal pursuits, like the pursuit of godliness, like the transcendent drive of knowing our Creator, of being in love with our Creator, of serving our Creator, of fearing our Creator, of loving each other and respecting each other like human beings ought to, and like they should, and like they should be trained to. And so I think this day, the reason it doesn't usually get the big celebration it deserves, in my opinion, is because it falls right between Tes and Yud Kislev. Tes is the birthday and the Yartzeit of the Mittler Rebbe, and Yud is his Chag HaGeula. He was also arrested, like the Alter Rebbe, his father before him, many years later, and he was also released, and he was released on the 10th day of Kislev. They wanted to make a big celebration in his lifetime, but literally the effect of the arrest had such an effect on his health that when he came back, the day before his Chag HaGeula was his birthday, ended up being his Yartzeit. He didn't make it to his first Chag HaGeula, but they still celebrate his Chag HaGeula. So you have Tes and Yud, and then you have Yud Tes Kislev, which is like a big day in the Chassidic calendar for many Chassidic camps, not just Lubavitch. So you find Yud Daled Kislev falls somewhere in the middle, and it doesn't get the acclaim, it doesn't get the honor I think it deserves, because, and again, you can't say this in the Lubavitch circles and really get away with it, but there's no clear indication that this was the life this man was going to live. His father was a Makubal. His father was a Kabbalist, and he died in exile, serving his community. I mean, he had a tough life. And even the fact that the Rebbe, and you have to see that the Rebbe went to a secular university, by all accounts. Some say the Sorbonne, some say a smaller one, but he had a degree in engineering. And there's no clear indication that this man was going to accept a mantle of leadership. Somehow he fell in love, or it was arranged, it was whatever it was, predetermined from heaven, that him and the previous Rebbe doesn't get married. And somehow, by Yud Shvat, by the previous Rebbe's disappearance, it was ordained by the Hasidim, and not by the Rebbitzin, not the previous Rebbe's wife, by the Hasidim themselves, that this should be our Rebbe. And this changed his life, and it changed the life of American Jewry and world Jewry altogether, because this man had such a love and such a self-sacrifice to every single Jew, even a Jew he's never met before. He reached out and he sent, literally at his own risk, he sent people to live in places with no Jewish environment. It says in the Mishnah, it says, exile yourself to a place of Torah and don't think it's your inheritance. And basically, the Gemara talks about it's dangerous to live in a place where there's no Jews and there's no Jewish world. And the Rebbe took on his own shoulders, on his own back, this responsibility that I'm going to send religious people to live in places where religious Jews aren't known to live, in case some come there, or in case some Jews want to come closer to Judaism, and they will be guided by these people that I send, these emissaries. Before, we take it for granted, but this was 50, 60 years ago. I mean, before this was introduced, this concept, I mean, you would get lambasted in Orthodox circles. You're risking lives. What about the education of the kids that you're sending out there? And who is he sending? Established rabbis? What about their Jewish life? What about where is their prayer minyan? Where is their shul? Where is their community? Where is their mikveh? Where is their kosher food? How are they supposed to survive? And the Rebbe sent with Mesiras Nefesh, with self-sacrifice, on his own account, and he knew it was his own account. And I'm sure he would say it's on the previous Rebbe's account, but this was his vision to transform the entire world into an outlet for Judaism, and into a dwelling place for Judaism, which is ultimately a dwelling place for God himself. This is something that, thank God we can't go back and rewrite. I can't imagine, and I don't think anyone with an honest, integral, with an honest imagination can go back and fathom if any other person got this role, it would be anything close to what the Rebbe did. He was taking chance upon chance and doing it with such a vision, such a wisdom to it, that now that it worked out, we say thank God. But at the time he was doing it, this was being questioned on many fronts, and it's something that he was successful on because of who he was and who his predecessors were, and the dedication that his followers, that his adherents had to him, and they trusted him. When they said, go to Zaire, go to Congo, these people went. I don't know when Congo shechas were sent, but there are people in Congo now. But when he said to just go, they would go because they knew they'd had his blessing and they knew they were under his leadership. And this something continues today in one of the beautiful signs of Chabad, that they were scared after Gimel Tammuz it was going to go down. It literally increased. The number of emissaries increased, the institutions increased, everything grew and got bigger, and it's known an entity can't grow without its head. So people say that there's no leadership. I mean, you can't get bigger without your head, any organism, so there's no reason to be concerned over that. So I encourage you again to use this day to, just like the Rebbe said, I'm connected to you, let's use this day to connect to the Rebbe. And the best way to do it, the only way to do it, is looking at a picture of the Rebbe is not, at a holy man, is not a way to connect to him. That's one way, but it's not the way. The way is to open up what he wrote and to read his Chassidus. There's a very time-appropriate sikha that he said. It's on sichasinenglish.org. It's in between last week's and this week's thing. It's called, I'll put a link to it. Basically, it talks about that the shlichus of the Jewish people has been completed. And the only thing that stands is now to accept Mashiach and to have the world